Hello and welcome back to the Okanagan Reader. I'm your host, Jim Bowering. Today's reading is Chapter 34 of Green Comet, the first book in the Green Comet trilogy. I will reveal the location of Chapter 33's video when I post the next on-location video, so get your guesses in now. In Chapter 34, Winston announces the debate to separate the comets. We see Fran debating with Winston again, supported by Elgin, Buzzard and Stanton. We see the audience swaying one way and the other. We see how they are united even as they are divided. Fran's debates. I always enjoyed Fran's debates. She seems to have such a connection with the people. Okay. Here we go then.
Chapter 34, The First Debate. A soft chime sounded through Green Comet, and the people cocked an ear for the message. There was none, only a few seconds of silence followed by another chime. When the third chime came, people put down what they were doing and gave the public address system their full attention. 3 chimes indicated the most serious of messages. The sound of Winston's voice confirmed it. The chair of the planning committee wouldn't be reading an ordinary announcement. The mic went live and Winston cleared his throat before saying, "People of Green Comet, this is Winston, representing the planning committee, with an important announcement." He paused, then continued. A proposal for a debate has been brought to the committee for consideration, and a simple majority has voted to approve it. Therefore, 1 week from today, the first of 2 debates will be held in the square. When he paused this time, the people's minds filled the gap with questions. What debate could be this serious? Who brought it forward? And who would be arguing? Winston didn't leave them guessing for too long. The question to be debated is whether we should separate the comets. It makes a very funny sound when that many people gasp in an enclosed space. You can find more details on your terminals. Thank you for your attention. The mic went dead. Green Comet filled with the roar of excited conversation as people pounced on the nearest terminal to find out what it was about. There was a brief description of the premise on which the proposal was brought forward, and the names of the debaters were there. Arguing for would be Frances, and opposing her would be Winston himself again. During the week leading up to the debate, the 4 of them spent many hours together, gathering information and helping Fran prepare. She was planning to present her case in the form of a narrative, from the time the flashes were first seen, to first contact, to methodical annihilation. She wanted to emphasize the inevitability of the final outcome, and the plodding mechanical thoroughness of the visitor. She thought it was important to make people realize that they didn't matter to it. It didn't care about them beyond their threat to its resources, and it cared about its resources a great deal. She was going to use real material, audio and video transmissions from the people under attack, to punctuate her speech. She would have diagrams showing the positions of all the major objects and populations in the system, and demonstrating how close they still really were to the inner system. Toward the end of her presentation, she hoped to be able to show a simulation by Buzzard's guy, demonstrating how easy it would be to find their trail and track them down. Fran was very busy assimilating the information and practicing speaking. Being Fran, though, she also spent a lot of time talking to people. She wasn't trying to convince anyone or to get them on her side. That's what the debate was for. She was talking to people to find out what they thought and how they felt, and to get a feel for what they needed. Knowing would allow her to debate more effectively, but to her it was more important that she would be able to know how to speak to the people's needs. She wanted them to understand the threat, to fear the visitor, but at the same time she wanted to show them how they could fight the threat and overcome the fear. Fran was nervous, but it was all right. She had done this before, and she found that a little nervousness could be helpful. It gave her more energy and helped her be more alert. She was standing with Winston on a small dais before a pair of green pillars. In front of them stood almost the entire waking population of Green Comet, save for the few who absolutely could not leave their work, and even fewer who couldn't be bothered. At the back of the crowd, she could see Buzzard and Stanton, and they nodded and showed their support. On the edge of the audience, on the yellow side to her right, stood Elgin, his solid presence a buttress, and his steady gaze a rock. As the proponent of the debate, she would go first. She shook hands with Winston, leaning in to say something to him. He nodded and smiled, then patted her on the shoulder before withdrawing far to one side. As she turned to address the listeners, a large screen behind her filled with their best image of one of the visitors' modules. It looked efficient and deadly. There was no concession to style or artistry, and certainly no attempt at beauty. All its lines were utilitarian, with no obvious structures looking as if they could house living beings. It embodied the cold, uncaring logic of a machine. "Hello, Green Comet," she said, smiling. A murmur of response went through them, and she said thank you. She didn't waste time sidling up to it, choosing to plunge straight in instead. "We have to separate the comets," she said, "and I'm going to tell you why." Then she told her story, accompanied by the sights and sounds of their species' demise at the hands of the visitor. She showed and described the inevitable result of being discovered by it, and tried to show the high probability that it would come looking for them. "We can't say with certainty that it will pursue us, but we believe that the probability is high, and the result would certainly be terrible. But that doesn't have to happen," she insisted, deeply affected by the fear and uncertainty in their faces. "We have the power to control our fate." And she outlined a plan to remove the small comet and make Green Comet look dead. With careful preparation and a few tricks thrown in, she assured them that the probability of survival was high. "By our will and our willingness, we will defy the visitor and assure the survival of our people," she said. "Only by not confronting the visitor can we defeat it." Winston stepped forward as Francis moved away from center stage. He stopped to congratulate her on a fine speech, and this time it was she who patted his shoulder in encouragement. He could see that the audience was quite worried. They obviously thought she had made sense, and they didn't know how much of it they should believe. Well, he would reassure them. "We don't need to separate the comets," he said, "and I'm going to tell you why. Yes, the consequences were dire when the visitor found people, but they had no evidence that it was even looking for them, much less that it could ever find them." Winston saw them relax as he spoke. Their tense bodies loosened up, and their faces smoothed out. His grave, substantial presence gave them confidence, and his deep, measured speech made them feel calm. "And we need both comets," he told them. "We need the resources, all the resources, if we are to survive." It was time to use a little anxiety in his argument, now that he had dissipated Francis's. "It's obvious we can never go home," he said. "We have to stay out here among the comets, or we have to make our way to another star. Either way, we're going to be out here for a long time." He let that reverberate, then said, "We can't afford to throw anything away based on mere speculation." The image Winston chose as his backdrop was of the joined comets, showing Buzzard's smoke rings sailing majestically away. It was the only image he showed, because he wanted to emphasize the security of permanence, while he talked of not only the value of their precious resources, but also the grandeur of their achievements. His goal was to plant in the people's minds how much they would be losing if they chose to listen to Francis. "The visitor has already taken away so much," he concluded. "We mustn't allow our fear to finish the job for it." The people had about the same distribution as the planning committee, it seemed. Roughly half of the committee approved the debate, and the other half opposed, and approximately the same percentages seemed to fall out after the first round of debate. The Comet was alive with discussions during the week between debates, and many of them were vigorous and loud. There was so much to lose either way that the intensity of emotions began to lead to violence. They were powerless to do anything to the visitor, and they began to take out their frustrations on each other. Francis and Winston got together and tried to calm the people down. They spoke on the public address system. They went to the schools to show children that, though they opposed each other on the dais, they were working together for the good of the comet. And they roamed the square where most of the discussions were taking place, and showed by example that they could disagree and still be reasonable. Reason and compassion, they told the people of Green Comet, are what make us better than the visitor, and better than it thinks we are.